My son looked me in the eye and told me I was too old to handle my own money. I'm Robert Callahan, 68 years old, Asheville, North Carolina. Spent 40 years as a civil engineer, built bridges that carry thousands of people every day, designed water systems that serve entire communities. I managed budgets in the millions, coordinated crews of hundreds, solved problems that would have broken younger men. But according to Brandon, my 28-year-old son, I'm too senile to sign my own checks. We were sitting in Ms. Harlow's office, a sterile place, all glass and chrome and that particular silence that comes with expensive hourly rates. Mahogany table between us, Brandon on one side, crisp suit, confident smile, me on the other, playing a part I'd rehearsed more carefully than he knew. He slid the papers across, smooth motion, practiced. Dad, we've been over this. His voice had that edge, impatience wrapped in concern. You forgot to pay the electric bill twice last month. You called me asking where Mom was. He paused for effect. Mom's been gone for 16 years. I let my hand tremble as I reached for the papers. Just a little shake, enough to notice. I know when your mother died, son. Then you understand why we need to do this. He tapped the papers. Power of attorney. Full financial control. It's for your protection. Ms. Harlow sat at the head of the table, watching. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, the kind of attorney who'd seen every family drama play out in rooms just like this. She'd been my attorney for 3 years. Brandon didn't know that. I picked up the pen, let it slip a little in my fingers. Where do I sign, son? Brandon's smile widened. He thought he'd won. I could see it in his eyes. That flash of triumph, that certainty that the old man had finally broken down. He leaned forward, pointing. Right here, Dad. Your signature. Just like always. I looked at the documents, squinted like the words were swimming, asked the questions a confused old man would ask. Will I still get my pension? Yes, Dad. Can I still buy groceries? Of course. That patient tone, the one you use with children. And my checkbook. Dad, he sighed, heavy and theatrical. I'll handle everything. You won't have to worry about any of it. $3.2 million. That's what we were sitting on. Life insurance from Helen. Retirement savings. The sale of our home when I downsized. Investments I'd made carefully over 40 years. Brandon saw it as his inheritance arriving early. I saw it as the final test of his character. I signed slowly. Each letter is deliberate, shaky. Took my time on every page. Brandon's fingers drummed on the table, soft at first, then harder. He checked his phone twice. Ms. Harlow raised an eyebrow at that, but said nothing. Almost done, I said, my voice thin and uncertain. Take your time. But his jaw was tight. I finished the last signature, set the pen down. I looked up at my son with watery eyes. Thank you for taking care of me. He stood, already reaching for his phone. That's what family does, Dad. Ms. Harlow gathered the papers, slipped them into a folder, asked if I needed anything. Water, a moment to rest. I waved her off, playing the tired old man who just wanted to go home. Brandon was texting, barely looked at me as I pushed back from the table. I signed the papers, just not the ones he thought. My hand shook as I signed, but not from fear, from control. You learn things in 40 years of engineering. Patience, for one, precision, for another, and the importance of reading the blueprint before you start building. Brandon hadn't read anything. He'd just assumed. I played my part perfectly. Asked about my pension again. Same question, different wording, like an old man losing his thread. Brandon's sigh was audible this time. He glanced at his watch. Expensive watch. Gift from me. 2 Christmases ago. He'd never thanked me for it. Dad, I already told you about the pension. Did you? I blinked slowly. I'm sorry, son. I forget things. I know. He softened his voice, but I caught the flash of irritation. That's why we're here. Ms. Harlow asked her questions. Standard procedure. Confirming I understood what I was signing, that I was acting of my own free will, that no one was coercing me. Brandon tried to wave her off. Ms. Harlow, we don't need... I do need Mr. Callahan. Professional. Firm. She turned to me. Robert, do you understand these documents? I let confusion cross my face. They're for my protection? That's right. Brandon jumped in. so I can help you manage things. Page after page. My signature at the bottom of each. Brandon watches the clock. Ms. Harlow watching both of us. I thought about the bridges I'd built. Steel and concrete, built to carry weight for 100 years. You don't build something like that by rushing. You calculate loads, test materials, triple-check measurements. One mistake and people die. Brandon never understood that. He wanted shortcuts, quick money, easy success. He dropped out of law school after 1 semester. Too much work. Started 3 businesses with my money. A food truck, a tech startup, and a consulting firm. All failed within a year. Never paid me back. Never even offered. I kept signing, kept up the act. Trembling hand, confused questions. The mask of an old man losing his grip. Inside, my mind was crystal clear. I thought about the $1 million budgets I'd managed, the infrastructure projects that came in under budget and ahead of schedule, the awards on my wall, the respect I'd earned from colleagues half my age. Brandon thought I'd forgotten how to read a contract. He was wrong. The last page, my final signature. I set the pen down carefully, like my fingers were stiff with arthritis. Is that everything? That's everything, Dad. Brandon was already standing. I'll take you home. No need. I stood slowly, using the table for support. I can drive. You sure? I remember how. He didn't argue, didn't insist, didn't offer his arm or walk me to the door. Just grabbed the folder from Ms. Harlow, not the one I'd signed, I noticed, and headed for the hallway. I'll call you tomorrow, Dad. All right, son. I shuffled toward the door, played the frail old man all the way to the elevator. Brandon was on his phone before I even pressed the button. I caught fragments, his voice bouncing off the marble floors. It's done, babe. Yeah, he signed everything. No, he didn't suspect a thing. I know. We'll celebrate tonight. The elevator arrived. I stepped in. I turned around slowly. Brandon was grinning at his phone. Didn't even look up to say goodbye. The doors closed. I stood up straight, rolled my shoulders. The tremor disappeared from my hands. 40 years of engineering taught me something else too. Always have a backup plan. I raised him alone. I gave him everything. And somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as his father and started seeing me as his inheritance. Helen died when Brandon was 12. Cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. The kind of fast that doesn't let you prepare, doesn't let you say everything you need to say. I became mother and father both, worked double shifts to keep Brandon in private school, made his lunches, went to every parent-teacher conference, sat through every baseball game, even when I was dead on my feet from a 14-hour day on a construction site. He got into a good college. I paid. 4 years, full tuition, then law school. He said he wanted to help people. I believed him. Paid for that, too. He dropped out after 1 semester, said it wasn't for him, said he wanted to be an entrepreneur instead. I gave him $50,000 for his food truck business. Follow your passion, I told him. The truck failed in 8 months. He never mentioned the money again. 2 years later, another idea. Tech startup. Dad, this is going to be huge. Another $40,000. It collapsed in 6 months. Then the consulting firm. I've learned from my mistakes. $30,000 this time. Gone in a year. I never asked for repayment. Never made him feel small for failing. That's not what fathers do. But I noticed something over those years. His visits became shorter. His questions became narrower. How are you turned into, can you help me with something? He stopped asking about my life, stopped asking about my health, stopped asking if I was lonely in that big house with Helen's ghost in every room. Last Christmas, he didn't show up. Called 2 days later with an excuse about traffic. I'd spent 4 hours cooking her recipes, Helen's recipes. The ham went in the trash. That's when I knew. I wasn't his father anymore. I was his retirement plan. The lawyer meeting wasn't about protecting me. It was about accessing my money while I was still alive. Power of attorney meant he could drain every account, sell every investment, spend every dollar, all while I was still breathing. He thought I was too old to notice, too confused to understand. I decided to test him. One final chance to prove I was wrong, to prove there was still some love underneath the greed. I set up the meeting with Ms. Harlow, told her what I suspected. She asked if I was sure. I hope I'm not, I said. But I was. I spent 40 years building things that last. Bridges don't stand on hope. They stand on steel and stone and mathematics. You calculate the weight. You plan for the worst. You build in redundancy. I built in redundancy for my son. The papers I signed in that office, the ones Ms. Harlow prepared, weren't what Brandon thought. They were something else entirely, something he wouldn't discover until it was too late. But I gave him a chance. 1 week, 7 days to call and check on me, to ask how I was feeling, to show even a shred of concern for the old man he'd just convinced to sign away his independence. 7 days to prove he still had a heart. He had 7 days to show remorse. He didn't. I gave him 7 days to call and apologize. He never did. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. The walk to my car took longer than necessary. I kept up the act. Slow steps, careful movements, one hand on the wall for balance. You never know who's watching. I glanced back at the building. 5th floor, Ms. Harlow's office. Brandon was at the window, phone pressed to his ear. Even from the parking lot, I could see him grinning. Animated gestures. Victory celebration. He didn't offer to walk me out. Didn't offer to drive me home. Didn't even watch to make sure I made it to my car safely. I drove home at exactly the speed limit. Hands at 10 and 2. Radio off, thinking. When you build a bridge, you start with the foundation, hidden work, below ground. Nobody sees it, but it's what holds everything up. Brandon never learned that. He only cared about the visible parts, the success, the money, the appearance of achievement. Home was a small ranch house in West Asheville, downsized after Helen died. I didn't need 4 bedrooms for one old man. Sold the family home for a good price. That money was part of the $3.2 million Brandon wanted so badly. I went straight to my study, the one room in the house that was purely mine. Helen's photo on the desk, her smile, her eyes that saw through every excuse I ever made. Engineering awards on the wall, blueprints from major projects rolled and stored in tubes, citations from the city, letters of recommendation, proof of a life well lived. Brandon had never asked about any of it, never asked about the bridges I built or the problems I solved. To him, my career was just the thing that generated money. I pulled out a folder from the locked drawer, thick folder, tab labeled Plan B in my handwriting. Inside were the real documents, the ones Ms. Harlow and I had prepared over the past 3 weeks. While I watched Brandon's visits become more frequent, his questions more pointed, his impatience more obvious. Power of attorney documents, but not the kind Brandon thought. These gave Ms. Harlow control if, and only if, I became mentally incapacitated, required 2 doctors to certify, required my written consent to any major financial decision, required monthly accounting, reviewed by an independent trustee, ironclad, legal, protective. The papers Brandon thought I signed? They gave him everything. Immediate access, no oversight, complete control. The kind of power of attorney that lets a greedy son drain a father's accounts and call it estate planning. Ms. Harlow had switched the documents while Brandon was checking his phone. Smooth as glass. Professional sleight of hand. I'd signed the safe version, the real protection. Brandon got copies of what he expected to see. It would take him weeks to realize they were never filed. By then, it would be too late. But I'm not a vengeful man. I'm a fair one. I gave him 7 days, 1 week to call and ask how I was doing, to show even a sliver of concern for the father he'd just manipulated. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, he texted. Got the paperwork filed. You're all set, Dad. That was it. 14 words. No. How are you feeling? No. This must have been hard. Just confirmation that he'd secured what he wanted. Days 4, 5, 6, silence. Day 7, nothing. I sat in my study on that 7th evening, Helen's photo watching me, and I knew. The test was over. Brandon had failed completely. He could have saved everything with 1 phone call. 1 genuine conversation. 1 moment of being my son instead of my heir. He chose silence. That's when I made the call to Ms. Harlow. It's time, I said. You're sure? She asked. I looked at Helen's photo. Thought about the man I'd tried to raise, the man he'd become instead. I'm sure what happened next changed everything. For 3 days, I waited for my son to call, to ask if I was okay, to show even a flicker of doubt. He never did. Day 1 was a Monday. I woke up at 6, old habits from 40 years of job sites, and made myself breakfast. 2 eggs, wheat toast, black coffee. Helen's kitchen. Still had her coffee mug on the shelf, the one that said "World's Best Mom." Brandon gave it to her when he was 8. I kept my phone on the table, face up, volume high. Maybe he'd call to check in. Maybe the paperwork had triggered something. Guilt, doubt, a memory of who we used to be. Maybe somewhere under the greed, my son was still in there. The phone stayed silent. I read the paper, tended the small garden out back. Tomatoes, basil, the things Helen used to grow. I'd taken over after she died, learning from her notes. Brandon used to help when he was little. Dirty hands, big smile, proud of every weed he pulled. That boy was gone. Day 2, Tuesday. Same routine. Breakfast, coffee, phone on the table. A friend from church stopped by that afternoon. Margaret, good woman, knows everybody's business without being cruel about it. She showed me her phone, asked if I'd seen Brandon's post. I don't do social media. Never saw the point. But there it was on her screen. Brandon, at some upscale restaurant. Low lighting, expensive wine. Ashley beside him in a dress that cost more than my monthly groceries. His caption, celebrating new beginnings. My stomach turned. New beginnings. His new beginning was my ending. My independence signed away. Or so he thought. And he was celebrating before the ink dried. Margaret watched my face. You okay, Robert? Fine, I said. Just fine. She didn't believe me. Patted my hand and left. I sat in my study that night, looking at Helen's photo. Wondered what she'd think. I wondered if I'd failed her somehow, raising a son who could do this. Day 3, Wednesday. I broke. I called him myself, kept my voice uncertain, confused. The old man act I'd perfected. Brandon? Son, I have a question about the paperwork. There's something I don't understand. Dad. Annoyed sigh. Background noise. Traffic. Voices. I'm busy. Everything's fine. Stop worrying. But I just wanted to... We went over this. You signed the documents. I'm handling everything now. That's the whole point, remember? So you don't have to worry. 37 seconds. I counted. Okay, I said quietly. I just thought, I gotta go. Talk later. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, looking at the black screen. Helen's photo reflected in it, ghost-like. Okay then, I whispered. That's when hope died. That's when I knew I wasn't wrong about him, wasn't being paranoid or unfair. My son had shown me exactly who he was. I believed him. My son wasn't just stealing my money. He was already spending it in his head, and so was his girlfriend. Thursday morning, day 4, Margaret called, said she needed to tell me something. Wasn't sure if she should, but figured I had a right to know. Turns out her niece works with Ashley. I had been hearing things. Ashley bragged at lunch about finally getting set up, about Brandon coming into family money, about plans for a boutique downtown, high-end clothing, Ashley's lifelong dream, funded by someone else's life savings. Mine. She's been shopping for luxury cars, Margaret said carefully, posted photos online, said something about test driving a Mercedes. I thanked her, told her I appreciated her looking out for me. After she hung up, I sat very still, not just Brandon, both of them, planning their future with my past, spending money they hadn't earned from a man they hadn't respected. Day 5, Friday. I ran into Frank at the post office, old colleague from my engineering days, sharp as ever at 73. He'd heard through the grapevine. Small town, word travels. Heard Brandon's telling people he's taking over the family business, Frank said, watching my reaction. What family business? That's what I thought. Frank shook his head. Boy always did have an imagination. There was no business, just my retirement, my savings, my investments from 40 years of careful planning and disciplined living. Brandon was repackaging it as his inheritance, his empire, his foundation. He was selling a story where he was the hero, and I was the obstacle, finally removed. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I put on a jacket and tie and drove to the bank, not my usual branch, the one downtown where the trust department was, asked to verify my account access. The manager, a young woman named Patricia, pulled up my files. "Everything looks normal, Mr. Callahan. All accounts active, no restrictions, no changes to signing authority. No power of attorney on file?" She checked again. "No, sir. Just you. Is there supposed to be?" "Just checking," I said. "Thank you." I drove home, slowly, letting it sink in. The paperwork Brandon thought he'd filed, giving him control, didn't exist in any legal system. Ms. Harlow had never submitted it. My accounts were still mine. My money is still under my control. Brandon didn't know yet. Wouldn't know until he tried to access something. And by then, it would be too late. Day 6, Saturday. 3 days left in my countdown. I spent the afternoon in my study, reviewing Ms. Harlow's backup plan, the real documents, the protections we'd built in, the trap we'd set. Everything was ready. I just needed Brandon to spring it. Watched the sunset from my back porch. Helen's tomatoes were coming in nice. She always said you can tell a lot about a person by how they tend their garden, whether they have patience, whether they think about tomorrow. Brandon never had patience, never thought past next week, always wanted the fruit without the planting, the harvest without the waiting. He was about to learn what 40 years of patience could build. He invited me to a barbecue, not because he wanted me there, but because he wanted everyone to see him in charge. Sunday morning, day 7. The phone rang at 9. "Dad, hey." Brandon's voice, casual, too casual. "Having a little get-together at my place this afternoon. Barbecue. Figured you'd want to come, see everyone. You know, since you're still getting around okay. Still getting around. Like I was one fall from a nursing home. That sounds nice, son." "Yeah, just family. Some friends. Nothing fancy." He paused. "Ashley's excited to see you." Ashley had met me twice. Both times she'd barely made eye contact. "What time? Come around 4? I'll throw some burgers on. Keep it simple." "Simple. Right. I'll be there." "Great. See you then, Dad." He hung up without asking how I was, without asking if I needed a ride, without asking anything that would indicate he saw me as a person, rather than a prop. I sat in my kitchen, morning light coming through the window Helen used to love, the one that caught the sunrise. This wasn't about including me. This was a theater. Brandon was staging a performance. The capable son managing the family, the new patriarch taking charge, the responsible adult making sure poor old Dad got his social interaction. He wanted witnesses to his competence. He'd get witnesses to something else. I spent the afternoon preparing, not the meal. Brandon would handle that. My appearance. Khakis, pressed, cardigan, the blue one Helen bought me, sensible shoes, and from the hall closet, the walking cane I'd bought 3 years ago after knee surgery. I hadn't needed it in years. I'd need it today, not for walking, for the performance. At 3:30, I loaded myself into the car, slowly, carefully, like every movement was calculated against the risk of falling. Started the engine, adjusted the mirrors with arthritic deliberation, drove to Brandon's rental house on the east side, the one I'd helped him secure last year with 2 months' rent and a security deposit. He'd never paid me back, never mentioned it. I arrived at 3:45, early, intentionally. The house was modest. 3 bedrooms, small yard, nothing special. But Brandon had decorated it like success. New furniture visible through the window, expensive grill on the patio. Everything is staged. I parked on the street, took my time getting out, cane in hand. I walked slowly to the front door, rang the bell. Ashley answered, took one look at me, and her face did something complicated. Surprise, then forced warmth. "Pops, you're early." She hugged me, quick and shallow. Come in, come in." She'd never called me Pops before, never called me anything. Brandon appeared from the kitchen, spatula in hand, an apron that said, "Grill Master." "Dad, hey, you're early. Didn't want to be late." "Yeah, well, we're still setting up, but make yourself comfortable." He gestured vaguely at the living room, went back to the kitchen. Ashley disappeared upstairs. I stood in the entryway, cane in hand, and looked around at the life my money had built for my son. Then I walked to the backyard, found a lawn chair in the shade, sat down, and waited. They were polite, they smiled, but I could see it in their eyes. I wasn't family anymore. I was a relic. People started arriving around 4. Brandon's cousins, Helen's sister's kids, good people who drifted after the funeral, a few of Brandon's friends, the kind who show up for free food and beer, Ashley's sister, loud and overconfident, some neighbors, about 15 people total. Ashley worked the crowd, playing hostess, offered me lemonade in a plastic cup, touched my shoulder like we were close. "How are you feeling, Pops? Are you comfortable? Need anything?" "I'm fine, thank you." She moved on, laughing too loud at someone's joke. Brandon held court by the grill, spatula on one hand, beer on the other, talking about market trends and investment strategies like he'd gone to business school instead of dropping out of law. "You gotta diversify," he was saying. "Can't put all your eggs in one basket. Portfolio management, that's the key." Terms he'd learned last week, maybe yesterday. One of his cousins, Marcus, came over, shook my hand. "Good to see you, Uncle Robert. Been a while?" "It has. Brandon says you're slowing down a bit. Is that true?" I let my hand shake while holding the lemonade. "Getting older. Can't do what I used to." He nodded, sympathetic. Moved on. No one asked what I used to do. No one asked about my career, my projects, my life before I became the old man in the lawn chair. I was furniture, background, the elderly father who needed managing. I sipped my lemonade and watched Brandon flip burgers with exaggerated confidence. Watched Ashley touch his arm, whisper in his ear, smile at their private jokes. I watched the cousins and friends drink beer and talk about sports and jobs and everything except the old man sitting 10 feet away. Helen used to say, "You learn who people are by watching how they treat those who can't do anything for them." These people had learned I couldn't do anything for them anymore, so I'd become invisible. The sun moved lower. The grill smoke drifted. Someone turned on music. The party settled into rhythm. Casual, comfortable, everyone relaxed. Everyone except me. I sat very still, came across my lap, and waited for the right moment. It was coming. He tried to use my credit card to show off. It was declined. That's when his world started to crack. Brandon was 3 beers in, holding court by the grill, when he decided to make his big announcement. "Hey everyone, listen up." He raised his bottle. "Next Saturday we're doing this right. Real celebration dinner. Steakhouse downtown. My treat." Cheers from the crowd. Ashley beamed, squeezed his arm. "Actually, let me call right now. Get us a reservation." He pulled out his phone, then his wallet, held up a credit card. Platinum, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Company card, he'd called it once. Linked directly to my primary account. He put the phone on speaker, set it on the patio table so everyone could hear. Showing off, the restaurant answered. Brandon gave his name, requested a party of 15 for Saturday night. "Certainly, sir. And how will you be guaranteeing the reservation?" "Credit card. Here's the number." He read it off, loud and clear, making sure everyone heard the confidence in his voice. Pause on the other end, clicking on computer keys. "One moment, sir." Longer pause. Brandon smiled at his audience, winked at Ashley. "Sir, I'm sorry, but this card has been declined." The smile froze on his face. "What? No? Try it again." "I've run it twice, sir. It's not going through." Brandon laughed, nervous, sharp. "There must be a mistake. Try it one more time." More typing. Another pause that stretched too long. "Still declined, sir. Do you have another form of payment?" "No, I just..." "Hold on." He snatched up the phone, took it off speaker. "There's $3 million in that account. Try it again." I couldn't hear the response, but I saw Brandon's face cycle through confusion, anger, then something close to panic. "Fine, I'll call you back." He hung up. I stood there, credit card in hand, 15 people watching him. Someone coughed. Marcus checked his phone. Brandon forced a laugh. "Technical difficulties. Bank's probably doing maintenance or something. I'll sort it out." He walked inside, fast. Ashley followed. Through the kitchen window, I could hear him shouting. Couldn't make out words, just the tone. Angry, desperate, confused. I sipped my lemonade. Tasted like summer. Like Helen's recipe, the one with fresh mint. From the garden. A cousin sitting near me. Jennifer, always been kind, leaned over. Are you doing okay, Uncle Robert? Just fine, dear. This is nice. Good to see everybody. Yes, I said. Very nice. Inside, Brandon's voice rose higher. Glass broke. Maybe he threw something. Ashley's voice now, sharp and questioning. The party had gone quiet. People pretending not to notice. But everyone noticed. I set down my lemonade and looked at Helen's tomatoes growing in the corner of Brandon's yard. He'd planted them after I'd mentioned I was growing some. Wanted to impress me, probably, or impress someone. They weren't doing well. Hadn't been watered enough. Too much sun, not enough care. I looked at those withered plants and knew exactly why his life was falling apart. And so it begins. He called the bank, screaming, but the account wasn't locked. It just didn't have his name on it. It never did. Brandon came back outside 5 minutes later. Phone pressed to his ear, face red, jaw clenched. He stood by the grill, not looking at anyone, but everyone watching him. Yes, I'm still here, he said into the phone. Look, I need to know why my account access is blocked. Not his account, my account. But he didn't know that yet. I'm calling about my account number. He rattled off my account number, the one he'd memorized from the paperwork he thought gave him control. Pause. He listened. His face got redder. What do you mean you need to verify? I have a power of attorney. I have full access. Another pause. Longer this time. Brandon's free hand formed a fist. Security questions? Fine. Ask them. He listened. Then his face went blank. I don't know his mother's maiden name. My mother's maiden name. Basic security question. Any son should know it. Brandon didn't. What's the other question? His voice had changed. Less angry, more uncertain. Another pause. Date of first account opening. How am I supposed to? He stopped. Listened. 1999? I don't know. I was 2 years old. He was 3, actually, but close enough. Ashley had come outside, standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Brandon pressed on. Look, I don't need to answer these questions. I have a power of attorney. Legal authorization. Check your records. Long pause. I watched his face carefully. Saw the exact moment the bank representative told him what wasn't in their records. That's impossible. I filed. He looked around, frantic. His eyes landed on me. I met his gaze. Took another sip of lemonade. Check again, he said into the phone, voice cracking now. Robert Callahan. Account ending in 7734. There has to be a power of attorney on file. The response must have been definitive. Brandon's shoulders sagged. No, there's not another. I'm telling you. He stopped, swallowed hard. Fine. Thank you for nothing. He hung up, stood there, holding his phone like he didn't know what to do with it. The backyard was silent except for the music someone had forgotten to turn off. Some pop song about summer and freedom and youth. Marcus cleared his throat. Everything okay, man? Yeah, fine. Just bank error? Brandon's voice was hollow. He looked at Ashley. She looked back, questioning, worried. Then he looked at me again. Really looked at me this time. Seeing something he hadn't seen before. I smiled, small, calm. The smile of a man who built bridges for 40 years and never saw one fall. Jennifer leaned over again. You sure you're okay, Uncle Robert? Do you need anything? I'm just fine, dear. Enjoying the party. Brandon's phone rang. He glanced at it, then silenced it. Probably the restaurant calling back. He set down his beer, walked over to me, slowly. The crowd parted for him. He knelt down next to my chair. I tried to keep his voice low, but I could feel the venom in it. What did you do? Time to end the performance. He asked me what I did. I told him the truth. I signed papers, just not the ones he thought. I looked at my son kneeling beside my chair, his face is close to mine, eyes searching, desperate, beginning to understand. What do you mean, son? I kept my voice shaky, confused. One last moment of the act. The account. His jaw was tight. The cards. What did you do? I blinked slowly. Then I sat up straight. My back didn't hurt. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I signed papers, Brandon. Just like you asked. His eyes widened. He saw it. The change. The mask falling away. What papers? I set down my lemonade, looked at him directly. No tremor. No confusion. Just clarity. The right ones. He stared at me. I watched the dawn slowly, like the sunrise over a construction site. That sick realization that something's been built wrong and it's too late to fix it. He couldn't finish the sentence. I stood up. I used the cane to push myself up, then set it aside, leaned it against the chair. I didn't need it. I hadn't needed it all afternoon. We should talk about this privately, Brandon said, voice low and urgent. Should we? I looked around at the gathering. 15 faces watching us now. No pretending anymore. These are family, aren't they? Friends? Don't they deserve to know? Dad. That's the first time you've called me that all week. His face went pale. Ashley rushed over, grabbed Brandon's arm. What's happening? What's going on? Brandon pulled away from her, stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. You don't understand, he said. We had plans. Ashley's boutique, the condo. We were spending my money? I kept my voice level, calm. Yes, I know. Margaret told me about the Mercedes you were test driving, about the celebration posts, about how you told everyone your old man finally stepped aside. Someone in the crowd gasped. Might have been Jennifer. Brandon's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. 7 days, I said quietly. I gave you 7 days to call and check on me, to ask how I was doing, to show even a flicker of concern for the father you just convinced to sign away his independence. I was busy. You were celebrating. Ashley looked between us, beginning to understand. Brandon? What is he talking about? Brandon ignored her, kept his eyes on me. What did you sign? What papers? I smiled, not cruel, just sad. Sad for the boy he'd been, sad for the man he'd become. I told you, the right ones. I turned and walked back to my chair, picked up my cane, not because I needed it for balance, because I wanted everyone to see that I didn't. Brandon stood frozen. Ashley pulled at his arm. Brandon, what did you do? He whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. He screwed us. Not quite, son. I screwed you. Ashley was just collateral damage. The gathering had gone completely silent. Even the music had stopped. Someone must have turned it off. Marcus spoke up. Uncle Robert, you want to tell us what's going on? I looked around at these people. Helen's family, Brandon's friends, witnesses to his arrogance and my humiliation. They deserved the truth. I told them the truth. Every dollar I had, gone. Not to him. To kids who'll actually appreciate the chance I gave them. I stood there in Brandon's backyard, cane in hand, and looked at these 15 people who'd watched me be treated like furniture for the past 2 hours. Then I set the cane down, completely. I stood on my own. A week ago, I said, voice clear and steady, my son brought me to a lawyer's office. He told me I was too old to manage my own money, too confused, too senile. Jennifer's hand went to her mouth. He had papers for me to sign, power of attorney documents, full financial control. He said it was for my protection. I paused. He was very convincing. Brandon's face had gone from red to white. Ashley stood frozen beside him. I signed papers that day, legal documents properly witnessed by a licensed attorney. I looked directly at Brandon. Just not the ones you thought. Dad, don't. The documents I signed transferred my liquid assets, all $3.2 million, into an irrevocable charitable trust. Someone gasped. Marcus said, Holy, the bulk of my liquid assets, all $3.2 million that would have been Brandon's inheritance, were transferred into an irrevocable charitable trust, the Helen Callahan Memorial Scholarship Fund. The silence was complete. Even the birds had stopped singing. Brandon has control over exactly nothing of significance, because the money he was after is no longer accessible to anyone but the trust. Ashley made a sound, halfway between a gasp and a sob. Brandon just stared at me, mouth open, face blank with shock. I gave you 7 days, I said quietly. 1 week to call me, to check on me, to show even the smallest shred of concern for your father's well-being. You sent one text, 14 words, confirming you'd filed paperwork. Jennifer was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. You never called to ask how I was. You never asked if I needed anything. You celebrated on social media. You made plans to spend money you hadn't earned. You told people I'd finally stepped aside. My voice stayed level, calm. You saw me as an inheritance, not a person. Brandon found his voice. You can't. That money, I'm your son. I know exactly who you are. I picked up the cane. I looked around at the gathering one more time. Thank you for the lovely party. The lemonade was excellent. Then I walked toward the gate, slow but steady, not because I needed to go slow, because I wanted them to see me walk away with dignity. Dad! Brandon's voice cracked. You can't do this. That's my inheritance, my future. I stopped, turned around, looked at my son one last time. Your mother would have been so disappointed. Then I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see Brandon standing in his backyard, surrounded by witnesses, his girlfriend pulling away from him, his cousins staring. His world was ending. Mine was finally beginning. I drove home alone, not victorious, just tired and sad that it had to end this way. The roads were quiet. Sunday evening, families finishing dinner, kids finishing homework. Normal life continued while mine had just fractured permanently. My hands were steady on the wheel. No tremor, no weakness. Hadn't been weak in that lawyer's office either, despite the performance. But now, alone in the car, I felt every one of my 68 years. I didn't feel triumph, didn't feel the rush of satisfaction revenge is supposed to bring. I just felt sad. At a stoplight on Merriman Avenue, I watched a father and son cross the street. The boy was maybe 7, 8 years old, holding his dad's hand. The father pointed at something, a bird, maybe, or an interesting cloud, and the boy looked up, face full of wonder. That was Brandon once, small hand in mine, questions about everything. Dad, why is the sky blue? Dad, how do bridges stay up? Dad, will you teach me? My eyes watered. The light turned green. I drove on. I thought about Helen. I wondered what she'd say about all this, whether she'd approve or tell me I was being too harsh, whether she'd remind me that Brandon was still our son, still the boy we raised. But Helen knew something I'd forgotten until recently. Love without respect isn't love. It's a dependency, manipulation, transaction. She wouldn't have wanted her life savings funding her son's greed. She would have wanted it to matter, to help, to build something lasting. I pulled into my driveway. Small house, quiet street. The porch light was on. I'd left it on that morning, a lifetime ago. Inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it. Study doors open, Helen's photo on the desk, everything in its place. I poured myself bourbon, rare for me. I'm a coffee man, always have been, but tonight called for something stronger. Sat in my chair, Helen's photo within reach. I did the right thing, didn't I? She smiled from the frame, didn't answer. Photos never do. But I believed she would have said yes. I believed she would have held my hand and told me I was brave, that it hurt now, but was necessary, that some lessons can only be learned the hard way. I sipped the bourbon. I felt it burn, felt the tears come again, quiet and slow. I didn't want this. I didn't want to lose my son. Didn't want to be the old man who chose money over family. But I didn't choose money over family. I chose dignity over exploitation, truth over lies, character over convenience. Brandon made his choice a long time ago. I just finally accepted it. The bourbon glass was empty. The house was quiet. Helen smiled on. I miss you, I told her. I could really use your wisdom right now. The silence was enough. I'd done what needed doing. Now I had to live with it. Within 2 days, his girlfriend left. His car was repossessed. He came to my door, screaming. I didn't open it. Monday morning, Ms. Harlow called. Brandon showed up at my office this morning, she said. Professional, calm, demanding to see the original documents, threatening to contest the trust. Can he? No. Irrevocable means unchangeable. I explained that to him, multiple times. He didn't want to hear it. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling in front of me. How'd he take it? Not well. He accused me of manipulating you, said you weren't mentally competent when you signed. She paused. I reminded him that I'd evaluated your competency thoroughly, as required by law, that you understood exactly what you were signing, that in fact you'd initiated the entire process. And he left, angry. I don't think he'll be back. Margaret called Tuesday afternoon. The gossip network was faster than any internet. Ashley moved out, she said. Packed her things yesterday, staying with her sister across town. That was fast. She told someone at the grocery store that she wasn't sticking around for a man with nothing. Margaret's voice held disapproval. Sorry, Robert. I know that's harsh. It's honest. I stirred sugar into my afternoon tea. She showed who she was. Same as Brandon did. Wednesday, Brandon's landlord called me. Frank Patterson owned several properties around town. We'd worked together years ago on a municipal project. Robert, I hate to bother you, but Brandon's late on this month's rent. I've been calling him, but I'm not covering it anymore, Frank. Silence. Then, understood. I figured as much. Heard some things around town. Just wanted to check before I start eviction proceedings. Do what you need to do. Sorry it came to this, Robert. Me too. Thursday evening, just after dark, I was in the study, reviewing scholarship applications. The trust had already started generating interest when someone pounded on my front door. Dad, open the door. I know you're in there. Brandon, voice raw, desperate. I set down the applications, didn't move from my chair. You can't do this. That money was mine. It was my inheritance. The pounding continued, harder now. Please, Dad, please, I'll lose everything. My apartment, my car, everything. I sat very still, Helen's photo watching me. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Just fix this. Please. Not sorry for how he treated me. Sorry for the consequences. The pounding stopped. I heard him on the phone, voice muffled through the door. She won't. I don't know. He won't even talk to me. No. The lawyer said it's permanent. I don't know what to do. Silence. Then footsteps down the porch stairs. A car door slamming. Engine starting. Driving away. I sat in the dark, listening to the quiet return. Friday. I drove past Brandon's rental house. I couldn't help myself. The furniture was gone from the porch. The grill, my grill, the one I'd bought him last summer, sat on the curb with a free sign. Saturday. Margaret called again. His car got repossessed this morning, she said quietly. Happened right in front of the grocery store. Poor man. Don't, I said. Don't poor man him, Margaret. That car lease was $600 a month. I'd been paying it for 8 months. He thought it was his money, his success. Never once thanked me. I didn't know. Nobody did. That was the problem. Sunday, 1 week after the barbecue, Brandon's social media went dark. All his posts were deleted. Profile picture changed to blank. The celebration posts, the restaurant photos, the new beginnings caption, all gone, like he was erasing the evidence of who he'd been, or maybe just ashamed to show his face. I felt no satisfaction in any of this, just confirmation that my son's character was exactly what I'd feared. He wasn't sorry he hurt me. He was sorry he got caught, and that made all the difference. 3 months later, I watched 5 kids get scholarships in my wife's name. One of them was studying engineering, just like I did. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. The ceremony was at the community college downtown. Small auditorium, maybe 100 people. Faculty, families, scholarship recipients. I sat in the back row, hadn't told anyone I was coming. Ms. Harlow was beside me. She'd helped organize the trust and wanted to see the first awards given. 5 students, first-generation college attendees, all from working-class backgrounds, all receiving $10,000 each toward their education. The college president spoke about the importance of giving opportunities to those who otherwise wouldn't have them, about legacy and generosity and community investment. Helen would have liked her. Direct speaker, no nonsense. Then the recipients came forward, one at a time. Marcus, studying to be a teacher. Father worked at the textile mill. Mother was a nurse's aide, first in his family to go past high school. Letitia, pre-med, raised by her grandmother after her parents died, worked 2 jobs to save money for books. James, computer science, father in prison, mother raising 3 kids alone. James was determined to change his family's trajectory. Deshawn, business administration. My parents ran a small restaurant that barely broke even. He wanted to help them succeed. And Maria, 19 years old. I am studying engineering. She stepped to the microphone, nervous, holding her notes with shaking hands. I want to thank whoever created this fund, she started. I don't know if they're here or if they'll ever hear this, but I want them to know what this means. I leaned forward. My father is a mechanic, works 60-hour weeks. My mother cleans houses. She leaves at 5 in the morning and comes home at 8 at night. Maria's voice cracked. They never went to college. They barely finished high school, but they always told me I could do more, be more. Ms. Harlow glanced at me. I kept my eyes forward. I'm going to be an engineer, Maria continued. I'm going to build things, important things, and every bridge I help design, every structure that stands because I helped calculate the loads and test the materials, that's because of this scholarship, because someone believed in people like me. My vision blurred. So, thank you, whoever you are. You didn't just give me money, you gave me a future. She stepped back. The audience applauded. I wiped my eyes, trying to be subtle. Ms. Harlow leaned close. Helen would be proud. I nodded, couldn't speak. After the ceremony, I watched the families celebrate, saw parents hugging their kids, taking photos, crying happy tears, saw grandparents beaming, saw younger siblings looking at the scholarship winners with awe. Maria's father, oil-stained work shirt, calloused hands, held his daughter and cried into her shoulder. That could have been me and Brandon. Should have been. Ms. Harlow and I walked to our cars in the parking lot, late afternoon sun casting long shadows. You did good, Robert. Helen did good. I just finally figured out what mattered. Still counts. I unlocked my car door, paused. You think it's enough? To make up for everything? Make up for what? You didn't do anything wrong. I lost my son. She was quiet for a moment. Then, no, he lost his father. There's a difference. I drove home thinking about Maria, about her father's calloused hands and her mother's early mornings, about Marcus and Letitia and James and Deshawn, about the man I used to think Brandon could be. These kids, these 5 students who'd received Helen's gift, they understood something Brandon never did. That opportunity is precious, that education is a privilege, that gratitude matters. That's when I knew, truly knew, I'd made the right choice. 6 months later, he sent a letter, not asking for money, asking for forgiveness. I'm not ready yet. Maybe I never will be. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No return. Address. Handwritten. Brandon's handwriting, though sloppier than I remembered. I stood at the mailbox, holding it. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to not open it. Inside, I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table. I turned the envelope over and over in my hands. Finally, I opened it. 2 pages. Handwritten. Blue ink. Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. Don't know if you'll throw it away the second you see my handwriting. Wouldn't blame you if you did. I'm living in a small apartment now, working construction, ironically, framing houses, pouring concrete. The guys I work with are good people. They don't know who I am or what I did. They just know I show up on time and work hard. I've had a lot of time to think. 6 months of thinking, actually. No distractions. No Ashley, no plans, no dreams of easy money. Just work and time and silence. I was wrong. Not just about the money, though I was wrong about that too. I was wrong about you, about what mattered, about what a father-son relationship should be. I forgot you were my dad, started seeing you as my bank, my retirement plan. My inheritance is waiting to happen. I stopped asking how you were doing and started calculating how long until I could access what you'd built. That's unforgivable. I know that. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just saying I understand now. I understand what I did, what I lost. I don't need money. I make enough to pay rent, buy food, and survive. I'm learning to live on what I earn, not what I expected to inherit. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry I forgot you were my dad, not my bank. If you never want to see me again, I understand. I deserve that. But if someday you're willing to talk, just talk. Nothing else. I'd like that. I'd like to hear about your day, your life, the bridges you built, the things I never asked about when I had the chance. I'm sorry, Dad. Brandon, I read it 3 times, each time noticing different things. The shaky handwriting, the crossed out words where he'd changed his mind, the tear stain on the 2nd page, faint but visible. Set it down. I picked it up, read it again. He didn't ask for anything, didn't say, I've changed or give me another chance, just apologized, acknowledged. I left the door open without demanding I walk through it. I thought about responding immediately, calling him, inviting him over, rebuilding what broke, but I didn't. Instead, I folded the letter carefully, put it in my desk drawer, the one where I kept important things: Helen's wedding ring, my parents' anniversary photo, Brandon's first report card from elementary school, all A's and a note from the teacher. Brandon is a joy to have in class. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday we'd sit down over coffee and talk about bridges and mistakes and how we both got here. But not today. Some bridges take years to rebuild, if they ever can be. I'd built structures that lasted decades, calculated loads and stress points and failure thresholds, knew that rushing a foundation meant risking collapse. Trust is a foundation. Brandon had demolished ours. If we ever rebuilt it, it would take time, years maybe, careful work, honest materials, and it would have to be his work to do, not mine. I'd already built my bridges, strong ones, lasting ones, bridges that carried people to better lives, scholarships in Helen's name, opportunities for kids like Maria. If Brandon wanted to rebuild ours, he'd have to show me more than a letter. He'd have to show me years of changed character, consistent actions, proof that he understood not just what he'd lost, but why he'd lost it. The letter stayed in the drawer. The door stayed open, barely, and I went back to living my life, one day at a time, knowing I'd done the right thing even if it hurt. A year has passed. I've learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, I volunteer at the Literacy Center downtown, teaching adults to read, men and women who slipped through the cracks, dropped out of school to work, raised families, survived decades without the skills most of us take for granted. Reminds me of my engineering days, building foundations, starting with basics, watching someone construct something solid, piece by piece, letter by letter, word by word. Last week, a man named Jerome, 52, worked in kitchens his whole life, read his first complete book, Dr. Seuss, Green Eggs and Ham. He cried when he finished. So did I. I've joined a woodworking club too. Meets Wednesday evenings in Frank's garage. Same Frank from my engineering days. 8 of us, all retired, all looking for something to do with our hands and our time. I've made 3 bookcases, 2 coffee tables, and a bench. Donated all of them to Habitat for Humanity. They go into homes for families who need furniture but can't afford new ones. Helen would approve. I attend the Scholarship Trust meetings monthly. Ms. Harlow runs them. She's the trustee, handles the legal and financial details. I just show up, listen to updates on recipients, and read their thank you letters. Last month, Marcus, the one studying to be a teacher, talked about passing his certification exam, said the scholarship saved him from $60,000 in debt. $60,000 he won't spend the next 20 years repaying. Money he can use to build a life instead of service alone. That's what $3 million buys. Not one man's comfort, but dozens of futures. I've made new friends, real friends, people who call to check in, not to ask for favors, who value time and presence over money and transactions. There's Carol from the Literacy Center. She volunteers too, teaches ESL to immigrants, widows like me, lost her husband 5 years ago. We have coffee sometimes, nothing serious, just companionship, the kind where neither person wants anything except the pleasure of the other's company. Strange feeling after so many years with Brandon. I thought loving someone meant giving them everything they wanted. I was wrong. If I could talk to my younger self, the 36-year-old widower working double shifts, the 54-year-old writing another check for Brandon's 3rd failed business, I'd say some hard truths. Love doesn't require sacrifice of self. You can be generous without being a doormat. You can support your children without bankrupting your soul. You can love someone fiercely while still demanding they respect you. I'd tell younger Robert, teach consequences early. They're kinder at 10 than at 28. For years, I gave Brandon whatever he asked for. Seed money for businesses, rent payments, car leases, bailouts from bad decisions. I thought I was helping, being supportive, showing unconditional love. but I was shielding him from consequences. Every time I wrote a check to solve his problems, I robbed him of the chance to solve them himself, to build character through difficulty, to learn that actions have results. I created a man who expected rescue, who saw his father as an ATM, who never developed the resilience he needed because I never let him struggle. That's on me, not the greed. That was his choice. But the foundation that made greed possible, I built that. Saying no to family isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do. It forces them to stand, to problem solve, to grow. I learned something else too. Respect isn't automatic, not even with family, not even with age. Brandon called me dad, but didn't respect me as a man. I saw my age as a weakness, my kindness as stupidity, my generosity as entitlement. I let that happen. Didn't demand respect, didn't enforce boundaries, just kept giving and hoping he'd eventually appreciate it. He never did, because I never taught him to. Respect is earned through integrity, yes, but it's also taught through boundaries, through consequences, through letting people feel the weight of their choices. Money doesn't corrupt people, it just reveals who they always were. Brandon always had that seed of entitlement in him. The money just magnified it until I couldn't ignore it anymore. And Helen would be proud not of how much I spent on Brandon, but of who I am when nobody's watching, the bridges I built, the people I helped, the integrity I maintained. That's what mattered to her. That's what should have mattered to me all along. 14 months after the barbecue, my phone rang. It was Brandon, not asking for anything, just talking. It's a small start, but it's something. It was a Tuesday evening. I was in the garage with Frank in the woodworking club, sanding a bookshelf I'd built for the literacy center. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Dad? I froze. Frank glanced over, saw my face, went back to his work to give me privacy. Brandon? Yeah, it's me. I'm using a new number, cheaper plan. He paused. Is this a good time? His voice was different, quieter, less certain. The arrogance was gone. It's fine, I said. What do you need? Nothing. I don't need anything. I wanted to call, if that's okay. I stepped outside. Cool evening air. Stars are starting to show. Okay, I've been in therapy, he said. 6 months now. Every week. It's helped. Made me see things I didn't want to see. I didn't respond, just listened. I looked up the scholarship trust, the recipients, read their stories, saw one of them, Marcus, the teacher. He posted a video thanking the anonymous donor. He talked about his family, his mom working 2 jobs, how the scholarship changed everything. Silence. Mom would have loved that, Brandon said quietly. She would have been so proud of what you did. My throat tightened. She would have wanted the money to matter. It does. More than I understood. He took a breath. Dad, I'm not calling to ask for anything. Not money, not forgiveness. Nothing. I needed you to know that I finally understood what you did. Why did you do it? I didn't trust myself to speak. Are you okay? I asked finally. Are you surviving? Yeah. I got that construction job I mentioned in the letter. Still framing houses. It's hard work. Good work. Honest work. He laughed, self-deprecating. Kind of ironic, right? Building things, like you always did. It's good work, I said. I'm living in that small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I pay the rent myself, buy my own groceries, cover my own bills. First time in my life, really. How does it feel? Terrifying. And good. Really good. We were quiet for a moment. The kind of silence that doesn't need filling. I know I don't have the right to ask, Brandon said. But could I call you again? Next month? Just to talk. Not about money or the past. Just to talk. About your day, your life, the things I never asked about before. I looked up at the stars. Helen's stars. Call me next month, I said. I will, I promise. Brandon? Yeah? I'm glad you're doing the work. That takes courage. His voice cracked. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. We hung up. I stood in Frank's driveway for a long time, phone in my hand, trying to sort through what I felt. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never completely. But something like hope. If my story has reached you, it's because someone thought it might help. Somewhere out there is another parent facing a child who sees them not as a person, but as an obstacle to an inheritance. Another elder being told they're too frail, too confused, too outdated to manage their own life. Let me share what 40 years of building bridges and one hard year of rebuilding boundaries has taught me. You are not selfish for protecting what you've spent a lifetime earning. That money, that home, those investments, they represent decades of early mornings, late nights, and sacrifices you made when no one was watching. No one, not even family, has an automatic right to it while you're still drawing breath. If someone's love seems conditional on access to your bank account, then it was never truly love. It was a transaction. Set boundaries early. Don't wait until patterns of entitlement have hardened over decades. Teach consequences when the stakes are small, when a child is 10, not 28. A no delivered with love when they're young is far kinder than the collapse that comes later. Find allies. Miss Harlow was mine, an impartial attorney who saw clearly when emotion clouded my vision. Seek your own. A trusted financial advisor, an estate planner, someone who has no stake in your decisions. Consider tools like irrevocable trusts. They are permanent by design, a steel beam in the foundation of your legacy. They protect not just assets, but values. Your children are not entitled to your wealth while you're alive, and perhaps not even after you're gone. You decide what your life's work supports. If someone views your continued health as an inconvenience to their plans, they've already told you who they are. Believe them. The hardest truth, sometimes the most loving act, is release, not abandonment, but allowing someone to face the full weight of their choices. I didn't destroy my son. I simply stopped cushioning his fall. I didn't lose my son that day in the backyard. He lost his father through years of small betrayals that finally added up to one irreversible breach. There's a difference. A year ago, I feared my story was ending, widowed, estranged, stripped of purpose. But endings are often disguised for beginnings. I found meaning in teaching adults to read, in shaping wood with my own hands, in watching young people like Maria build futures Helen would have cheered for, and perhaps, in time, a cautious bridge back to Brandon, one honest conversation at a time, built on respect rather than expectation. I'm Robert Callahan. For 40 years I built bridges that carry strangers safely across rivers and valleys. But the strongest structure I ever engineered was the boundary that finally protected my dignity and Helen's legacy. Build yours the same way. Deliberate, load-tested, and unapologetically strong. You deserve nothing less.